All right, let's talk about English. We're going on a quick tour around the world today, not just to see different places, but to hear them. We're going to be exploring the major varieties of English, from the streets of London to Los Angeles, all the way to Lucknow. So let's jump right in. When you're learning a new language, people always talk about listening to a model speaker. What does that even mean? Well, it's basically someone who speaks the language really clearly and naturally. They're kind of like your guide for getting the pronunciation, the stress, and the rhythm just right. But that brings up a really fascinating question, doesn't it? English is spoken all over the planet, and it sounds completely different depending on where you are. So, which version is the right one? Is there a correct model to follow? That's exactly what we're going to unpack. Okay, first stop on our tour has to be where it all started, the United Kingdom. We're going to take a look at the classic, the original form of the language, what we call British English. This is pretty obviously the English you'll hear spoken all across the UK. For millions there, it's their first language. And for a long time, especially in places like Europe and Africa, this was the standard version of English that was taught in schools. Now, you might have heard of something called received pronunciation, or just RP for short. Think of the classic BBC newsreader voice. One of its most famous features is something linguists call non-rhotic. Sounds technical, I know, but what does it actually mean? It's actually pretty simple. It just means that the R sound at the end of words kind of disappears. So a word like car sounds more like ka. Father becomes fada, and water sounds like wada. That soft ending, that missing R, is a total giveaway. And of course, it isn't just about how things sound. The words themselves can be different. In London, you take a lift up to your flat. But in New York, well, that brings us perfectly to our next stop. We're hopping across the Atlantic now to check out the innovator of the family, American English. This is where the language really started to stretch its wings and evolve in some pretty interesting ways. Right off the bat, you'll notice the spelling is different. Words like color lose their U, and center gets flipped around. And, this wasn't an accident. It was actually a very deliberate move to simplify things and really to create a distinct American identity separate from Britain. Okay, so remember how we said British English is non-rhotic? Well, you guessed it, American English is the total opposite. It's rhotic. And that just means that the R sound is pronounced pretty much everywhere you see it. So that word car we talked about, in American English, you really hear that final R, car. Same thing with words like far and teacher. That hard R sound is probably one of the biggest tells of a standard American accent. And it's not just the R. You've also got those broader, flatter vowel sounds in words like fast and dance. And the guy we really have to thank for all those spelling changes? That would be the famous dictionary writer, Noah Webster. He pushed for these changes to make a truly American version of English. It was a symbol of cultural independence. For our final stop, we're heading to India. Here, we're going to explore a version of English that's a true global fusion, one that's been uniquely shaped by local history and a tapestry of different languages. Indian English is not a new thing at all. It's been evolving for generations. And today, it's a huge part of education, government, and just everyday life for millions and millions of people all across the country. This is where Indian English gets really creative and fun, with its own unique words and phrases. For example, you might hear someone say they want to prepone a meeting instead of postpone it, which is so logical, right? Or you might be asked to kindly do the needful, which just means please get the task done. And instead of classmate, you might say batchmate. These are just perfect examples of how a language makes itself at home in a new place. Indian English also has its own distinct sound. For instance, the T and D sounds are often a little softer because the tongue touches the back of the teeth. The rhythm of sentences can also be different because it's influenced by local languages, and the intonation or the melody of the speech can have its own unique cadence. It all comes together to create this clear, expressive, and widely understood form of English. So, from the UK to the US to India, our little trip shows us something really powerful. English isn't just one language. It's just incredibly rich, diverse family of languages with so many different and equally important voices. This chart really sums it up nicely. For British English, you've got that traditional form and the non-rhotic or silent R. With American English, it's all about innovation and that hard rhotic R. And for Indian English, it's those unique dental sounds and its amazing local expressions. 3 different varieties, each with its own clear personality. And really, here's the bottom line.
Whether you say ca or car, whether you take a lift or an elevator, whether you prepone or reschedule, none of them is better or more correct than the other. They're all perfectly clear, they all work, and they all make English the vibrant global language it is today.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. In a world that's more connected than ever, are these different types of English going to start blending together and sounding more alike? Or will they keep evolving and become even more distinct from each other? It's something to ponder. Thanks so much for tuning in.